guy's pushing me on the right somewhere.
There's too many doors. There's too many doors.
Almost dead again.
The Siege of Orison is Star Citizen's big event, and it's almost great, but only almost. And that's because the reality of it is that it's not quite there yet.
No! God, please, no! No!
Still though, the improvements that the developers have introduced have made a big difference when the servers cooperate, still making it worth it to revisit the event for players who've tried it before and for new players who've never had a chance. I mean, these improvements have done such a good job that there were some moments where I thought I wasn't gonna make it.
Incredible. It's been a privilege and an honor, Jack. We're gonna go out together here.
I'm actually on my nerves. That's good. Right, I'm on my nerves.
This is hard. I mean, this is great. Almost dead again. All right, I can run. Let's get out. Let's get to the big building. Go, go, go. Run. Run.
Dude, I can't.
So in a moment, I'm gonna go over what they've done to improve the event so much, as well as briefly go over what the event includes for those of you who've never tried it before. And if you guys think I've done a good job by the end and you want to say thank you, you can make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And you might also check out the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN, who go a step further with their threat protection service. It works against intrusive ads, malware, trackers, and malicious websites, and I've already personally been using them for years after getting fed up with dealing with free VPNs that just didn't work, which by the way are probably a little risky to use in the first place. So now I can access IP-restricted websites which I couldn't otherwise while I'm here working in Taiwan. I also use the app on my iPad to let me watch shows like Strange New World Season 2, which frustratingly isn't available in Taiwan. It's also really good if you've not checked it out before. So if you're looking for a reliable VPN service and you want to help support my channel, head on over to nordvpn.com/morphologist to get a huge discount on a 2-year plan, plus get 4 additional months free. That's nordvpn.com/morphologist, and if none of this really works for you, you can always get your money back with their 30-day money-back guarantee. So last year, for the patch 3.17.2, CIG introduced the largest event yet they called Siege of Orison, taking place on the then newer gas giant of Crusader in its cloud city of Orison, all while making use of the new 100-player cap for the server. And before you say something down below, yes, I know, Star Citizen only has a 100-player cap, that's crazy, but we don't have server meshing yet. That's actually coming sometime next year based on what we learned from CitizenCon, which you can learn all about from my video I made a little earlier where I summarized the entire thing, so check that out if you guys haven't seen it yet. Back to Siege of Orison though, to give you a quick breakdown of how it works, players are given a mission to join the Civilian Defense Force to team up with other players and Crusader Security to push out a gang called the Nine Tails from the Inspiration Park platforms on the outskirts of Orison City, where there was a weapons trade show going on. The event features 4 sprawling, progressively more difficult platforms, each teeming with heavily armed pirates and a big bad who will show up pretty much anywhere on the platform. Players must fight their way through the gang and find that big bad on each of the 3 platforms in order to eliminate them and to loot a data pad. The data pad will give you a key code to unlock the many containers scattered about each of the platforms, of which there will only be one that contains the next objective, the IFFI or IFFI device. This basically inverts the defenses of the platforms to shoot friendlies instead of foes. You need to disable that so it starts shooting the bad guys once again, and so you can take off with the ships that they provide to reach the last admin platform where you're going to fight the final lieutenant and the final big bad. There are, of course, rewards to incentivize you helping out. Quite a lot, actually. You'll get around 50k for each phase completed, totaling at around over 440k after the mission completes. In addition, the bosses have unique armor that you can take back with you should you be fortunate enough to find, kill, and loot them before anybody else does. And this pretty much describes the first iteration. It was really good actually in concept. Visually, it was stunning and very different than anything we had experienced before, and a lot bigger than any of the other events because it was tiered through a series of these platforms that got progressively harder leading up to a boss, whereas the other events were more straightforward. However, there were some issues with it in terms of gameplay design, minus of course the bugs which are ever present in the Star Citizen experience. So the first problem that popped up was pretty obvious. Players were essentially racing each other to find the first boss, and because the AI didn't function all too well because of the servers, they didn't pose enough of a threat to slow them down. So what you had were a bunch of players sprinting as fast as they could around the platform to find the first boss and eliminate him first. That way they could get the cool gear and the extra cash. Later, when players understood the objectives a little bit better, they would also sprint to the next platform ahead of killing the first boss so that they could get that one as well. The result was that the first 3 platforms would have the objectives completed within the first 10 to 20 minutes of the event. The result was that, of course, anybody who didn't sprint to go try to find the boss would have been left behind and basically didn't have to or couldn't really do anything because there weren't enough enemies to pose a risk and there was no boss to kill. This issue was even further compounded by the fact that the event, once triggered, would just start, so that anybody outside of Orison or on another planet would have to try to get there in time to participate, and by the time they would get there, well, the event would already be over. I mean, as we know, Star Citizen travel times are not short. And as if none of that was already bad enough, players eventually figured out that they could just camp the platforms and wait for the next event to start, thereby being right where the bosses were gonna spawn and just kill them right away, basically. I mean, they spawn in random locations, but as long as you were on the platform before the event started, you were gonna be the first one to find them no matter what. But arguably, those weren't even the most significant issues. There were issues with accidentally shooting players and getting crime stats and then just being sent to prison, or even bigger issues with players who would just PK other players and wait at bottlenecks with grenade launchers, like the tram entrances or the elevator entrances, where they would just camp with a grenade launcher and kill people before they even stood a chance to fight back. And those were just the issues with the design of the event. Aside from that, there were problems with the game itself. There were issues reloading, you could get stuck in geometry, and worst of all, bosses could sometimes spawn inside of walls or floors, making it impossible to complete the event. And like I said before, because of server issues, the AI were effectively brain dead for most experiences players had, so you could just walk in front of them and they wouldn't react to you whatsoever. I mean, some even made a sport of trying to run the entire event naked. It became the meta for a little bit because you had nothing to lose and only something to gain if you looted anything, right? Which, while hilarious, probably wasn't what the developers were expecting when they designed the event.
This event is like nothing you've experienced in Star Citizen so far. You will need to prepare. You will need ammo, weapons, armor, otherwise you will not make it out alive.
Now, all of these issues make the event sound like it wasn't going to be any fun at all, but that's not really what happened. A lot of people still did enjoy Siege of Orison, especially when it worked and when they played in groups of friends. But it wasn't perfect. As I said, there were a lot of problems, and so even though people were excited, most agreed that there was a lot of unrealized potential with the event. Thankfully, instead of just trash binning the event altogether, CIG decided to come back and continually upgrade it, which brings us to today with the big improvements that address many of the issues that I've already discussed. To start off with, they've now introduced a 30-minute warning period for when the event is about to begin. This gives players a good amount of time to settle what they're doing and make their way over to Orison. And it's actually been a great way to gather with other players ahead of time near the elevators and make groups. I've actually seen this firsthand, and it's kind of heartwarming. It's cool to see this kind of community building happening organically in the game without players having to make up their own event. And speaking of the elevators, they also changed those as well. You can no longer get up to the rooftop to get on the tram to take you to those platforms ahead of time. Instead, they're locked until the event begins, which again forces everybody to wait and go in together, giving everyone a much more equal chance at finding the bosses. And then to prevent players from camping the platforms between events, they eventually will now forcibly remove players who remain in between them. This makes sure that nobody's left over from the last one. This completely then removed the ability for people to camp, which I think we can maybe all agree is probably a good thing. But of course, pacing was still an issue, which they also looked to address with some new changes. One of the things they've done is made it so now you have to find the lieutenants and get their code before you're able to activate the shuttle to the next platform. The effect has been in every event that I've played that I've been able to get on the first tram over and have a pretty good chance at killing the next boss, even though it can sometimes be a race against other players to find the boss. But thankfully it's random, so sometimes you can just get lucky by checking a random rooftop. But one of the other great things they've done to help improve pacing was to improve the AI itself. So they've introduced the new Squadron 42 AI into 321.1, which is part of this Orison event. And I have to tell you that it can be pretty impressive when the servers are running at 5 or more FPS, getting progressively more challenging when the server FPS goes higher. And just to explain that quickly, AI is dependent on the server's tick rate. If the tick rate is low, then they're not able to update your position fast enough to be able to shoot you accurately. So they need a higher tick rate in order to be basically challenging. But they've done something to make it so that even at 5 FPS, if you're facing them in large numbers, they can still flank you and kill you if you're not getting rid of them fast enough. But it can get really challenging when it gets to 10 to 15 FPS or above if you're running in a small group or solo. And in fact, it makes it kind of impossible to complete the mission by yourself in some locations where they're just all around you. I found myself being constantly flanked, pushed, and shot at even sometimes great distances, sometimes across platforms, which is bigger distances than we've ever seen before. Let's just be thankful that they can't snipe us yet, because when they can, well, it's going to be way tougher. And the effect, of course, has been that people just need to take the event slower, otherwise they're going to die. And that has given a lot of people a chance to find the bosses, to catch up with people, and to have to work together in really engaging ways. That's the experience that I personally had with my friend running it the other night. But it's not just that the AI are better. The time to kill for players has also been increased, which has made it possible to actually have injuries now, whereas before you would just die before you'd ever experience any kind of injury, making the health system that they have in the game kind of pointless, really. So now there's more of a strong reason to use a med gun or med pens to heal certain types of injuries, and to seek out that tier 3 medical bed on some of the rooftops to heal up those tier 3s before they become more serious and start slowing you down. The result has been less trips back to the hospital and less deaths overall, which I really appreciate. It's better to stay in the fight and have fun than it is to visit the hospital over and over again. Going back to some of the design of the event itself, they also made some changes to the final barge, where now the doors are locked to the rearmost portion of the final boss battle to make sure that people are grouped up before they go in, so everyone has a more even chance to be able to take them out. They also added a self-destruct feature to the ships that you find on the platform so they can't be stolen out of the mission area, and added a new no-fly zone surrounding the area so that players couldn't fly in with their own ships. This is great because if someone could, they could conceivably bomb the platforms with size 10s and kill all of the NPCs and players there just to troll it. And on the subject of player killing, they also added a new feature called Ninetales Sympathizers. Basically what happens if a player shoots another player or a friendly NPC is that they're going to get marked as a Ninetales Sympathizer, as an enemy combatant. This gives players who are still doing the event the chance to find and eliminate them before they become a problem. And well, I'm sure some of you may have preferred that they just prevented people from killing other players. I think it's great that they instead tried to look at it as a way to add a new feature into the game and make the event a lot more interesting. All of these together, though, have created probably the very best experience that the event has ever offered. But as I said at the start, it's just almost great. Just almost, because unfortunately, there are some problems that still need to be addressed. Quite serious ones, in fact, that I ran into more often than not, and most of them are bug-related. The biggest issue that I've seen happen more than a couple of times were the AI spawning in the floors of some of the platforms, in some cases including the boss. And if that happens and you're not able to somehow glitch through the wall to kill the boss, the event effectively stops because there's no way to progress to the next platform or to get to the final big bad. Personally, through the 3 times I played, I wasn't able to complete it once. And aside from that, there are still the run-of-the-mill problems we've had forever, like the poor server performance, which causes issues with reloading, healing oneself, desync issues, and the AI not being responsive all the time. But those have been less common than before, so that's kind of a win. To me then, this round of Siege of Orison is a bit of a tragedy. On one hand, it's the best we've ever had for the event, but on the other, I haven't been able to complete it once. So I really hope that they go and fix this and bring it back once again in a state where everybody can experience it most of the time and complete it and just generally have a good time. I mean, events for Star Citizen, events for MMOs in general are supposed to be great times to build community, to get together, to get excited, and probably also to fund the game, because if people are having fun, then they're gonna spend more money. This is a win-win for everybody involved. And if they do want to add some more facets to the experience, I think that they could maybe think about adding some things like Pisces medevacs that players can fly and take a mission for to extract players with serious injuries to a hospital, or like a Ford hospital that was located on the first platform, for example. Just add some kind of synergistic relationship between different playstyles so that people who aren't really combat oriented can get in on the action and feel like they're contributing in some meaningful way. I'm personally a combat player, but I can see how this could create a lot of fun interactions between players that will just make the event better all over. But otherwise, bug fixing is really the major issue here. But what do you guys think? Do you feel that these improvements have made a positive impact? If not, why? And what would you like to see them add, improve, or change to make the event the best it could possibly be? Let me know down in the comment section below. Otherwise, I hope to see you guys in the next one.